And so he has to make a plan, and which is surprising to me. That thing is not he did not make a decision beforehand. He didn't have a plan, or as it's not such a concrete position, probably he does choosing from the different plans, and he decided to go knight c3, not to make commit a move with the pawn on d4. I think he might be still happy to keep that place for the knight. And only after black is playing c5, let's say, only then he's going to be playing d4.
That makes perfect sense to me, and I think that the one downside of starting with knight c3 rather than capturing it right away, while we're often taught to keep tension until it favors us to release the tension, that after c6, that we may enter a position where we could just have a symmetrical pawn structure. And when there's symmetry, it means that you're fighting for the same files. It doesn't mean that you can just play and try to get some kind of ambitious ideas going, oftentimes in a symmetrical position. It's just a quiet maneuvering affair. So, for you, Judith, from your perspective, do you think that Gukesh is just going to play with like c6 and be ultra solid, or will he say castle first? I don't see tremendous risk in these decisions, but White may be preparing to take on d5 because, as you mentioned, that if the knight were still on b1, Black would just take back with the knight on d5 and keep that white knight at bay. Now that the knight is already out on c3, your ideas with b4 and queen b3, they definitely are at the forefront of my mind.
Yes, there are decisions to be made by Gukesh, but it's not such a huge ones, right? So, for example, even queen e7 is possible. Just a little bit stopping White from thinking about moves like b4 in the near future. c5, it gives a completely different structure. I'm not sure how much Gukesh is so comfortable there. I think this is what Ding is aiming for. After c5, he can capture on d5 and then to play b4 and hoping for an isolated pawn kind of position. And I think right now, really Ding is trying to steer the game in a position where Gukesh does not feel so comfortable. This is the main goal of Ding. It's not to get a great position, great advantage. No, no, no. That would be too optimistic. And that's not the point. The point is that somewhere he can play and maneuver a long game and try to provoke his challenger a little bit and steer the game in a position where he just feels very good. I mean, this position, what we have on the analyzing board, I think it would be like a fantastic achievement for White. So this is the thing that Ding is trying to get the position where he can enjoy himself a lot. And Black is very much under control, castle. So they both developed already, both sides. That's why knight c3 was kind of very logical and I believe the important move. So let's see how Ding is going to be continuing. I think he will withhold the move d4 because after d4, Black can go knight e4, which is a great spot for his knight in many cases. And for this kind of structure, the knight on d7 stands perfectly fine because many times it can support the e4 knight with the knight d7 to f6.
I'm with you there, Judith. That d4 may be a bit premature. I'm not really sure if not for d4 in the live position.
Yeah.
C takes d5. I keep repeating it. I feel like a broken record. That at least this changes up the pawn structure. It makes a small imbalance of having black with only one central pawn, white with two of them. So if we just show that c takes d5, black can take that first, but I think taking back with the pawn is just going to illustrate my point. And then in a position like this, you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, that black has this c pawn, white does not have a c pawn, but white does have an e pawn instead. So we have at least asymmetrical pawn structure with chances for white to play along the c file to get this queen out, maybe rook f to c1, and just hint at the queen side being advantageous for white.
Generally speaking, I quite like this kind of play with white to take on d5 and play b4. At the same time, maybe white wants to play more solid to go c1 immediately to keep the tension and still asking questions from Gukesh. Are you going to play c5 after all, or you want to really go to c6 or queen e7? Uh, it's also a possibility for white, I believe.
Yeah, I think I can tell by your tone you want the capture on d5. Like you're thinking, let's get something going here. Maybe this will drum up some chances because in all reality, Judith, there is no risk for Dane to take on d5, right? And from Gukesh's perspective, these one move here, one move there, that's not what's going to cost these players the game. It's all about strategizing and coming up with something, a legitimate plan versus just making individual moves in a very balanced position at the moment. So I do think that if Dane is ambitious, if he is fresh off the rest day, looking to not just score points. These top players, we know they
Hey,
don't just
dude.
think, let me win the game. You can't be results oriented in a chess match because it's an objective game. You need to think about how the position has gone move by move. But I think if Dane Duran even has the slimmest of hopes to win, at some point he's going to have to make a decision that either changes the nature of this game or perhaps does what you said earlier with like a knight d4, pawn to f4, just throwing some pieces forward.
Yeah, I mean, knight d4, f4, I would like to have if I have an extra three tempo more, probably. Then I would be more comfortable with that. So far, the most straightforward plan, I think, is still c takes d5 and d4. This is what something that comes to my mind. But I can be too concrete myself. I was not playing these kind of structures with white at all, and even with black, I was not really going into these kind of positions. It usually is very slow. That things are happening in a very slow manner. Move here, move there, maneuvering. You're placing your pieces in there, and then little changes all the time. After c takes d5, he takes d5 and d4. White has a very straightforward plan to bring his queen to b3, to play a4, to possibly, as you said, bring the rook to c1, to f1 rook. So that seems to be a very possible continuation for white. So this is a big question: whether is he going to be playing solid, very solid, or just more actively solid?
And there's this expression that I often resort to is the side that controls the pawn breaks is often the side with the advantage. And if just if we can bring up the analysis board again quickly, that if after CD ED, this pawn on E3 is really hard to get to. But after white plays B4 and does go forward with these plans on the queen side, if black ever plays C6, we can see white use this pawn minority attack idea and play b5. So it does feel like, and we just saw Dane capture on d5, it does feel like white does have a little bit more control of the queen side than black will get of the center. The center seems very sturdy from Dane's perspective. So this does look like, and he has played before, Judith, we may be in for, I'm going to speak for myself, excuse me, that I think we're going to be in for a longer battle than I initially thought because I did think that he might allow some symmetry and a peaceful game. No, England Brand says I'm going to go with these
Why are
ideas
you
that we've been
wasting your
talking
knowledge
about,
then?
and now it's up to Gukesh to find the correct continuation.
Nobody
And
got
Judith,
time.
I'm going to pass the baton over to you. If you were
Stay
handling
B,
this
stay
position
B,
from
Jet.
the black side, I think a number of things come
Stay
to mind.
B,
But
guys.
ultimately, what plan do you think that Gukesh is going to aim for?
Well, first I want to say that I like the approach. I like it that they decided to take c takes d5 and d4 because
इधर
it's a
पीछे
very
इधर पीछे.
straightforward decision and goes for some strategy, gaining space, which is very important in this kind of game and structure. Black played just c6, which I think is the most logical move, because otherwise even white
स्मोक
would
में
have
स्मोक गया.
been thinking
क्या ढूंढ
about
रहे हो भाई
later
तुम
on
लोग
pushing
यार?
b5.
इतनी देर से यार.
So after c6, I think a5 is something that black considers at the later stage for sure. The queen most likely going to be placed on e7, I
तो
believe.
केजे अंधा है सही में.
And then the rook from f8 can support with rook on c8, for example. But of course,
वो
in
अंधे केजे
the later on
दिखते नहीं क्या एनिमीज तेरे को?
decision,
एनिमीज दिखते नहीं है
then
तेरे को? यहाँ
how
बैठा
to
हुआ है वो.
react after whether white plays b5 or when he plays
नूबड़े खेलने
b5
आते हैं भाई.
or when he plays a4. Of course, I believe that after a4, for example, black will definitely go a5, because
हाँ हाँ तेरे लिए तो ये अच्छी
black
हुई
does
है.
not want to allow white to be pushing the pawns
एक्सक्यूज
a4,
छोड़ो गेम
a5
सीखो
and
पहले.
gaining space there, because then it would be a very pleasant position for white. So there, for example, it could be forcing matters immediately a4, a5, b5, then black is
काम पे
keeping
तो
it
टॉप फाइव करते
that
ना
way,
भोसड़ी के.
or he also has an option to play already c5 and not allowing to exchange the
वीडियो वाले को
pair
यार.
of pawns. Yeah, after b5, I think c5 is
झूल रहा है
also
जीरो किल
quite
पे
a
टाइप कर रहा
reasonable
है.
move, because already here after d4, black can be pushing c4, and this is a lot different kind of position. So black will not have to play the isolated pawn. So this is why I believe white is not going to be playing a4, but most likely he's going to be developing with his queen to b3 and rook c1.
अपने
And of
सपने
course,
देख लो.
after b4, white is
जीरो किल वाले
time to time will
सपने अच्छे
consider
देख, ठीक
to
है.
play knight
और
d4,
अच्छे अच्छे
because it
सपने देख.
cannot be pushed away by playing c5. And the knight can be placed very well on d4. And we might see f4 also on the board, trying to play positionally, pushing, sometimes even thinking about f5 to close the power of the bishop on h7.
I'm just going to make a few moves to just to sort of emphasize that, because it's a really instructive thing that you're mentioning, that bishop h7, f4, it's an objectively good move, and at some point f5 shuts down that bishop and just completely puts it out of the game.
Yeah, so it can be going to this direction, but and slowly white can get a very pleasant position if black is not paying attention and not reacting in time on things. So this is the big question for me, that after c6, how black will be playing fast enough and to react exactly the way he should, to not to allow everything for white to improve his position.
I think your point though about a4, a5, it's so essential in these positions, because if you just sit and do nothing, and let's say I make a different move, like a very bad move, like a6, this is a huge
कैसी टीम मिलती है
strategic
भाई?
mistake, because whether I play a5 or throw in knight d4 first, I'm not sure it matters so much, but the point is that you mentioned this, Judith, a5 is like a clamp. Now white has all the space over there on the queen side, and even though the objective evaluation
क्या देख रहा है चेम्बर? हेलो। वालेकुम अस्सलाम। मेरे से भाई। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह। अब बोलो। आप कैसे? हेलो। हेलो, आवाज आ रही? हेलो। हेलो। वालेकुम सलाम। खैरियत से?
हेलो।
हेलो। खैरियत से?
हाँ अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह।
हम्म। वॉइस कट रही शायद।
हाँ इसको तुम ये हाँ?
नहीं, नहीं समझ में आया, क्या बोले? नहीं समझ में आया मेरे को।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। वो व्हाट्सएप पे मेरे ख्याल से कॉल ही नहीं जा रहा। अब मैं आपको करता हूँ। Objective evaluation is slightly better for white, nothing too major. It's
So he could afford just spending a minute. He was not spending too much time on this decision.
I think Gukesh should be very happy with his position because he was the one surprised by this bishop a3. Instead of being kettering the bishop, being brought all the way out on the diagonal, and it just caused a little bit of confusion. But Gukesh, the strong player that he is, said, "All right, I'll just calm myself down, calculate a little bit," and he has worked his way out of it. So Queen b3, this hints that White is going to press forward on the queen side. Makes perfect sense. Later, Rook f to c1, and then a4 will be an option, but don't push a4 too soon. I think this is really the key in this position because a4 will often be met by a5. And if black plays a5 right now, Judith, I think a3 will be the response. So at least you can protect your pawn with another because this b4 pawn does cover this very important c5 square.
Indeed, as you say, the b4 pawn is essential to cover the c5 square. Well, I'm thinking right now that can we figure out why knight d4 is more important to play first for thing and only after that playing bishop queen b3? Is it something concrete that he had in mind? Why the knight stands better on d4 already before playing queen b3? Or it's just the decision he made? Because sometimes, sorry, just sometimes, I want to say that the threat is more powerful than actually the execution. And knight d4 was always there to play in the next.
So I guess if I'm reading into this correctly, so queen b3 first. Is there some reason that knight d4, bishop h7, that inclusion felt necessary now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could it be in the event you mentioned this idea earlier, Judith? So I'm just trying to use your teachings wisely. Is knight e4 a possibility now, where knight d4 won't happen because d2 is loose in many of these positions? So maybe could this be a bit of a difference, or not really?
I think it's a very good reaction what you're pointing out by playing knight e4, and this can be. But you see, the reason why I asked this question because these are the very small details which can lead the game build up to an advantage and later on to a win. Where we don't necessarily see why exactly, but this can be a conclusion or a reaction to Queen B3. And also that he wanted to gain space and improve the position of the knight first. But indeed, knight e4 seems to be pretty logical. But after bishop 8, knight d4, bishop h7, queen b3, knight e4 is also possible.
Yeah, knight e4 can definitely be played here, and I'm wondering. I mean, I'm also trying to figure out the difference. Like, why is that knight just on d4 so important? Would that even give a plus? And we see that nothing has really changed, at least from the objective evaluation. And if you take on e4, d takes e4, at least maybe that doesn't come with a tempo, but actually this would just be a transposition anyway. So um, I am trying to figure this question out. I think as you're very importantly indicating, Judith, like these nuances, they actually are very consequential at the high level that you played at, and continue to. And the Gukesh and Dingner, they can't afford to make these little mistakes because they build up and then pressure mounts, and then you feel like you are getting squeezed. But for Gukesh, I think that he doesn't mind. Like these little details, perhaps right now, he's not so worried about. I guess the big picture is he's safe, and his position is just that solid.
Black's position is very solid, but let's say if White would be playing several moves, White can improve his position very clearly. Rook c1, maybe even knight a4 and knight c5, like after rook f c1. If we forget about all these kind of plans which we were talking before to play f4, which I still believe at one point it may be on the board. So rook fc1 and then play knight a4 and improve the other knight's position and play knight c5. And only after that trying to play a4, a5, b5.
I'm just going to put a few moves on because it's an important variation that, let's say black plays a6 or something kind of quiet, knight a4 comes, and then I'm just going to sort of waste a move with like rook c8 and then knight to c5. So this is Judah's point, which is an extremely good one. That if black were to ever take on c5, something that you definitely don't want to do, look at how the transformation of pawn structure impacts the position. This b7 pawn is what we call a backwards pawn. It would love to move forward, b5, but don't forget about this little French rule called en passant, because c takes b6 and white is just completely winning. If white couldn't take en passant, then black is just hanging in there. But because that rule exists, it means you have a big, big eyesore on b7, and you're just on the defensive for the rest of the game.
Yes, so we can say that this is the dream plan of white, right? But Gukesh is not going to be sitting there and actually comfort and support this thing. So he will want to do some reaction, and also of course after knight a4, knight e4 can be even more powerful from black side. So it's not so easy to execute this from white side.
Yeah, and actually, if you want to avoid all these ideas altogether, perhaps knight e4 right now for Gukesh might be an advisable move. Just forcing a trade of knights because the knight on c3 is in contact with the knight e4, and knight takes d2 would be a threat. So actually, you are just forcing material off the board. And I guess the question is, Judith, with trades, what trades would you want from the white side, and what trades do you think that Gukesh from the black side is aiming for?
Well, I believe right now, well, if I can choose, I don't want to trade anything. But one thing is sure, I don't want to trade my knight on d4. But there is not even a chance to trade that. So actually, black can go rook e8 with an idea to do knight f8 and knight e6, trying to push back the knights from d4. But there is a good chance that it's going to be too slow for playing this way. So knight e4 is something that black should be considering. The other idea that he's just playing solid and slow, maybe to play queen e7 and queen d6 also, that I think would be a great spot for the queen. And knight e4 is always something that black should be considering. So now there is this maneuvering kind of game starts because white wants to improve his position on the queen side very clearly, and black wants to be ready for any action. I don't know if, let's say, we would take off the white square bishop, what it would give for white and black. And in one hand, the f5 square would be a big one, but for now, I don't see that white can really do too much with that. And I think it would be possibly more important for black to go knight g4 options. And the way white can be better is because of the structure. The pieces are not such a big deal for the moment, I think, in difference. The d4 knight seems to be very comfortable there, but it must not necessarily be there forever.
And Judah, when you say the structure, this pawn chain, we love pawn chains. That means that we have don't have to use more valuable pieces to defend the pawn. So b7 and d5 is healthy, and I guess you're saying that because of that, black is just very solid, and thus, while the pieces are less active on the black side, at least the pawns are well defended, and there's not tremendous risk there.
Yes, the pawn structure there is very stable for black, absolutely, and it is so difficult to crank with white. Especially now that the knight is on d4, the only breaking point is to play b5 on the queen side. And for now, when the knight is on d4, that cannot be the plan of white because after c5 comes with the tempo, black is just doing very fine, very important tempo, which is gaining by black. So so there are some maneuvering and
Door open
pace
कर chamber, door open.
improvement has to be done for white, but somehow I feel that f4 will have to come. It's the only thing that queen b3 was more of a priority for Ding. I'm also curious, of course, where white is going to bring his rook. But right now, actually, that we are talking about this, maybe a4 can be a threat. What do you think? Because if black plays a5, because that should be the good reaction for black on a4, a5. Maybe white can capture b takes a5, and the b7 pawn is hanging. But maybe black just plays knight c5 with the tempo, and after that he can capture back the a5 pawn. So
It's
probably
just
a5 would be early.
yeah, it's frustrating. It feels like that's an idea you'd want to go forward with, but as long as black can meet a4 with a5, as you've astutely pointed out many times, and black is the one who's happy about those pawn pushes. So we'll try to see if that can be worked out. Gukesh is deep in thought, and I guess Judah, quickly, I want to ask you, as Gukesh continues to ponder his decision before we head to break, Do you feel like this position is more up one player's alley than the other, or do you think both are comfortable in this kind of dynamic?
I don't know how comfortable Gukesh about his position and how what kind of experience he has in this structure and this kind of position, but I think he's quite okay. But he does have to understand the position, the ins and out of it, that he can play it well. Because there are a lot of plans. Like, do I have to keep my knight on d7 to be able to jump to e5 if it's needed? Do I have to keep my queen on d8, or should I be replacing it to d6 when there is action? That's where it stands the best. Should I be playing knight e4, exchanging those knights, or in both circumstances, capturing back with the pawn from d5, or bringing my bishop? So there are a lot of questions to be asked by himself of Bukesh. So he can spend a lot of time, and he can cause mistakes also to be played.
Okay, you heard it from Judith herself here that there's so many questions with every single move. So these players, they are trying to work through the complications as best they can. There are many fans on site in Singapore watching this action unfold. And while if you couldn't make it out to Singapore, I understand. I'm not there either, but I'm so happy to be covering this event. You can make it to another chess event in person. Don't miss your chance to attend the Champions Chess Tour Finals live and in person. Eight of chess's greatest titans, including Magnus Carlsen, Alireza Perugia, and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, will gather in Oslo, Norway from December 17th to 21st, and you are invited into the room. Along with high stakes and high caliber action, tickets also include perks like braid, simuls, photographs of players, and more. Use the command CCT Finals in chat or visit go.chess.com/CCT Finals 24 to secure your tickets now. We are going to head to a quick break, but when we return, it is more from Singapore. This is the 2024 FIDE World Championship.
Mom wore this to my wedding.
Yeah, she did. We'd each make one move every morning before starting our day. Never got to finish this one. You've been practicing?
Not since I was a kid. My first. You'll be alright, Dad?
Might be good. Love you.
Love you too. Coming to Angelina's party?
I'll be there.
Alright.
Hello?
Ready to play?
When did you do this?
Don't worry about it. It's your move. Playing Grandpa.
Really?
It's kinda about to destroy me. He's pretty good. Nice one, Dad.
ये चले चल। पागल हो क्या? प्लांट करो ना यार। ऐसे टैप दब जाता है भाई।
战术和心理上面 ，DFM 有拿捏住 Paper X。你要前压我做默认，然后你不前压的话，我的所有转的信息你都捕捉不到。对。
其实我觉得这个还是这一分还是跟开局进岛了有很大的关系。
是的。
一开始因为进岛定了虽，B 通被迫要顶出去尝试把这个缺口给补回来，但就是你会发现你越去找补，这个缺口越大。
但这种枪真的是你很难要求每个选手都能打出来，就像 B 小打 C 小这个位置的回旋跳，他给他摘下来了。2比5 ，Paper X 还在连续的丢分，而 DFM 现在是越打越顺，势头正盛啊，连拿5分了。上一回又教了很多的终极技能啊 ，Paper X 现在技能已经要清空了，
主动出来控制 B 通了。当心，
你教我也教，打掉给的技能好多啊，双前锋在 B 通露脸 ，Paper X 要去分析这个信息，别打了，1-5
没走掉。但有在一起，
有
玉成，
但这个角度不好在一起，
而且
再掰，把自己也给掰进去了，就没有在一起了。但 MyFree 跟近2个人也是在 A 通的位置往外顶了，顶了一个，把 Cis 的单价给抓住了。
那这样有人数优势了，
这是很少见的，我觉得 Paper X 在早期拿到人数优势。少见被抓摊命的在关门，是的，中路布点，一切都在 DFM 的计算之中。
局面再次变成了2打1，留给近一个1人的回防。
而且近还有很多角度要看，金波选择先看一眼，但这一看也把自己看没了，场面变成一个1-1。
听到了装包，知道这个人就在点内，手上还有
重力补网，
重力补网，
应该是来不及跑回 B 通的。看一下镜能不能算。
哇，看妹手上全技能，
但他现在肯定不交技能了，血量有点
先加一枪再说。
就一颗，
还有重力补网，
应该是来不及跑回 B 通的。看一下镜能不能算。
哇，看妹手上全技能，
但他现在肯定不交技能了，血量有点
先加一枪再说。
就一颗阿卡米，把这个残局又兜住了，依然是以下犯上，但越打下去你越会难分辨谁是真的下，谁是真的上。DFM 现在进攻方是连续取分。
अबे यहाँ पे आउटलॉ है देखो। राइट में राइट में राइट में।
而且他们用各种各样的方式在赢 Paper X。
对，
这个
你要人数劣势残局吗？也有，人数
对
优势我也稳得住。
我能运营，我能去做默认，我也可以去一波的进点，我甚至可以在人数劣势的时候去扳回这一个局面。
而且刚刚这一分已经是 Paper X 非常熟悉的一种节奏了，两边都顶，然后通过这种小范围这种配合来去拿到人数优势。但问题在处理这波3打2的时候太过于粗糙了。首先是在 B 通的关门被抓到机会，而在中路回援怪兽也没有想到破点处还有藏人。
尽能带上一个1打1，已经算是找了点机会。
是，最后也是输给了安康边的准度，我觉得这也没有办法，因为这种持架一颗你是很难有还手的机会的。
直接脱钩了，2个战力全叫了，而且叫的很早。上半场才打完8分，2个战力全部掏出来。
还是迫于输了图1的压力吧，这张图不容易有事，而且整个对面的这个进攻边很重要，因为他们这个时候换到自己的进攻其实也没有见得很好打，能够给到佛塞克这个霓虹的支持也很少。
这样的一支队伍让我有点想起去年天气刚的那种感觉了，就刚重组回来直接就
打啥状态全开，
对，太有劲儿了。
看一下经济面板还是没有需要，我觉得现在真的很需要一把。
他们想存区又会需要再存年分，就是干一点。
对他们好像也没太有多回合能够再操作一把，
那这样会非常难受。其实慢打这种局面上区是最好用的。
而对面终极技能又多，钱又多，现在其实对 DFI 来说，就是能兜底的，我们说保护其实非常非常多。
而且现在注意一下，双少都缺 A 了，因为他们发现打败这个玉成在 B 区好像也发挥不了太多作用。
这份镜一开始好像是至少有一个贴片是没有给哦，看一下有什么用意。他这边应该只能买得起一个贴片，只有一个声纳贴片。
差一个点有自己的断魂索道，
对，
他可能想在前点去尝试一下。
就是我反正这分就尝试去
而且
前面拿
这个角度，就算他被补了，也有机会玉成拉起来。
黑中路杀人，直接当兵了。想一找也有人没办法，这个位置确实是黑完之后非常好的一个位置。打这2个进 K 位置能够再补一个进攻，这边速度给了出来，去找人，这也被瞬间给解决掉。包在中路啊，这分准确说在 B 外啊，金梦这分想要拿到很难打，金梦一个人，还有一个他们其实是倒地的状态。是的，
没错。
而这次中路的一个设计，我觉得 Paper X 还是相当有内容。
你喜欢打 A 小，喜欢打中路的摇摆，你中路人就一定会多。
对，
这其实是有点赌博的，他没有那么确定中路到底有几个人，但我就是黑着先把几人杀了。
对，而且逮中的人几个再说，
这个暗眼配合重力布网，确实是很跳脱出我们常规在这张图会见到的一些这种反性的技能。
还有这种东西，
对，因为刚所在这张图上的一个上场真的太少了。
而且这个刚好是避开了对面的这个全面封锁，把对面全面封锁还消耗掉。
对。啊，确实这波暂停是很有效的，而且安子教练，我觉得他的指挥方式也很明显。如果说我单边的压行不通，那我不如大规模就大家一起来
捅出去。那这一分进就是回到了一个常规的布置，把自己的深海黑影放在了 A 大边角，漂亮，非常不错的，
还能走，
还算比较健康的回来了吧？这一发是把对面全部马消耗掉。
对。啊，确实这波暂停是很有效的，而且安子教练，我觉得他的指挥方式也很明显。如果说我单边的压行不通，那我不如大规模就大家一起来
捅出去。那这一分进就是回到了一个常规的布置，把自己的深海黑影放在了 A 大边角，漂亮，非常不错的，
还能走，
还算比较健康的回来了吧？这一发是主动的一个反清，或者说是撞对面的第一时间的这个立足未稳的时候。这回合 TFM 确实也没有做太多的默认，他们直接走到了一个3点3球，其实只扑到了前侧。
因为前面几分其实更多还是刚走会在前面点放贴片，没有怎么主动出来清过。
对。
अरे कहा हो ना अरे चूती हो क्या बेंचो वीडियो बोल रहा हूँ
这一波是
कब देखोगे ये बे
配合闪，然后接引过去了 ，6 玩的还是蛮飘逸的。但这个其实很
अरे तब से ऊपर चढ़े हुए तब से बोल दिया तुम था ही नहीं रहे दिख रहे हो तुम तो
小凤
离魂看了一眼 A 外的应该是知道 A 点很有利，要不要考虑把
但我觉得对于进攻方来说，他们现在最忌惮的是这个断魂左道，因为你打这个 A，然后你就知道双左大概率在 A，那你怎么去比双左？你这阿祖怎么又扎一个，又穿了一个？你猜在哪儿？在脑袋上的位置。一条对步，但是要被吃了，扎了，大招给出去啊，还没能够再接一个人，救了奥丁救人太简单了，兄弟，快的救。
तो खेलने दोगे
还剩35发，
甚至相信，我觉得都可以考虑要不要直接保了，因为下一分反正正好没钱。
我能进来看能进的技能，这个1打3，试一下5滴血，阿紫也没有吃到这个雷霆。
खेलने दे खेलने दे खेलने दे
这个回防难度很大，奥丁和奥丁亦有不同啊。
इधर मतलब रिवील डाला है रुको अंदर है ड्रोन करना है क्या नहीं मेरे को सर में दिख रहा था क्या इधर ही है वे। यहाँ पे है। ऐसा। ये चूतिया बिना मारे मर गया। 80 है चेम्बर, ठीक है। मिड देखो कोई। अरे तुम लोग क्या कर रहे हो, स्पाइक है क्या? एक एफ के स्पॉन पे। हाँ, एक इधर ही थी। शायद घूम के आएगी, शायद घूम के आएगी। सही देख रहे हो तीनों, सही देख देखते रहो। स्पाइक का ही देखो एक बार कोई। ऐसा। राइट में देख। हेलो। ये भाई दो लोग बी पे ही है अभी भी। फिनिक्स के ऊपर, फिनिक्स के ऊपर, फिनिक्स के ऊपर अपना मैंने। हमें बनने डालना है इधर। नाइस। थोड़ा खुला प्लांट करो यार। सेज इधर कैंप कर रही है भाई। कभी भी ठीक है। You know, क्या पागल होते हैं भाई।